Right, we're going to have a look at the difference between e adjectives and na adjectives in this video tutorial. Over here we've got a selection of e adjectives, most of which you may know. Chikai, close. Furui, old. Chisai, small. Ii, good. Yasui, cheap. Toi, far away. Subarashi, splendid. Tanoshii, fun. Atarashii, new. Okii, big. Samui, cold. Kuroi, black. Takai, tall or expensive. Michikai, short. Omoshiroi, interesting. Now you'll notice that e adjectives have one thing in common. They all end in the letter e. E, E. Now they have to have an independent E at the end. When we change things like the tense and whether it's negative or positive, we are going to be removing that E and replacing it with something else. Have a look over here at the na adjectives and we can see that they don't necessarily end in an E. We've got ski, likable, kirei, pretty, genki, full of beans, healthy, kantan, easy, ichiban suki, favorite, benri, convenient, ichiban suki, that's favorite again but in hiragana, shizuka, quiet, hen, weird, jouzu, skillful, yumei, famous, and suteki, splendid. Now some of those end in e. Kirei does. It's the only example here, but there are quite a few na adjectives which end in e, but it's completely random. They can end in any letter whatsoever. Now they're two distinct groups and they behave in two distinct and different ways. And if you can understand the difference and use it correctly, you're up to A star or IB level 7. Let's have a look at the differences between the two. To explore the differences, we're going to start off with a basic sentence and then we're going to add either e adjectives or na adjectives to it. Okay, I read a book. Read, that's the verb, so that's going to go at the end. Yomimashita, notice it's past tense, so we have to make sure it ends in shita. And our book is the object of our verb. It's what we read, so it takes object particle o. Hon o yomimashita. I read a book. Now we're going to add an adjective in front of hon, so we're going to describe the kind of book we read. Now if we want to choose one of the e adjectives, it's very simple. We just take the adjective we want. In this case, I've chosen to add interesting. I read an interesting book, and just as in English, we just pop the adjective right there in front of the noun, and that's it. Nothing more necessary. Omoshiroi hon o yomimashita. I read an interesting book. On the other hand, if we want to describe this book using one of our na adjectives, in this case I've chosen strange, then we need to do something. So here's the strange. It still goes in front of that noun, but if you wish to put a na adjective in front of a noun, then you absolutely must add the na particle after it. So you end up with not hen hong, but hen na hong o yomimashita. Everything else stays the same. Hen na hong o yomimashita. Okay, now we're going to look at a different kind of sentences. This time we're going to look at an A is B sentence. The book is interesting. So our adjective is not going to be in front of the book. It's not an interesting book. Our adjective is going to be the B portion of our A is B sentence. And it's going to be sitting in here without a noun following it. So we'll just pinch this omoshiroi. Now when that happens with an e adjective, no problem. We just pop the e adjective interesting there at the end. Nothing changes. Hon wa omoshiroi desu. The book is interesting. What happens though when we do the same thing over here with na adjectives? So we're still starting with the book. Hong. Well, that's our A in our A is B sentence. So the book is, this time it's strange. So we'll pop strange down here. Hong wa hen desu. Now when we used hen in front of a noun, we had to add the na. That's the rule for na adjectives. But when we use it on its own, in other words, there is no noun following, then it doesn't take any particle at all. We just use it on its own, just as we did with our e adjective over here. And we get hong wa hen desu. So we can just go back over that. If we use a na adjective before a noun, we have to add na after the na adjective. Hen na hong. But when we use it on its own, it doesn't need anything at all. Over here, when we use omoshiroi, an e adjective in front of a noun, it just pops in there. We don't need to do anything. And when we use it on its own, again, it doesn't need to be modified or changed in any way. Now we're going to have a look at what happens when our sentence changes into the past tense. So it's no longer the book is interesting, but the book was interesting. Now when you change e adjectives into the past tense, it gets quite tricky because the des, the is, actually doesn't change. What happens is the adjective itself has to become past tense. Let's see what happens when we change an e adjective into the past tense. You may recall the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get rid of this e, and we're going to make the stem of our e adjective. And there it is. The e has gone and we're left with omoshiro, and that's our adjective stem. Now to make an adjective stem into the past tense, we're going to add here katta. And there it is. Omoshiro katta desu. Hon wa omoshiro katta desu. The book was interesting is. And that's how you do it in Japanese. Now, here the na adjective situation is much simpler because na adjectives behave just like nouns. So if we want to say the book was strange, we get hon wa hen, and we simply change des into its past form. And you may recall that that is deshita. And there we go. Hon wa hen deshita. The book was strange. Let's now have a look what happens when our sentence or our adjective becomes negative. So the book is not interesting. So it's still present tense, but it's become negative. Now again, when an e adjective changes into the negative, it's not the des that changes. That stays the same. It's the e adjective itself. And instead of ending in katta, it becomes omoshiro kunai. And again, we finish with des. Hon wa omoshiro kunai desu. As for the book, not interesting, it is. In other words, the book is not interesting. Over here, when we have a look at the na situation, again, much easier. Exactly the same as if it were a noun. It's the des here which becomes negative. Hon wa hen de wa arimasen. You may recall too that instead of de wa arimasen, which means it is not, you can say ja nai desu. Ja is just the more informal form of de wa, and nai is the plain form of arimasen. But it's a little rude if it doesn't have any des on the end. So when we use the plain form in polite company, we're going to add a des to make it a little bit more formal. Janai desu. Hon wa hen de wa arimasen. The book is not strange. Hon wa hen janai desu. Let's have a quick look again. E adjective. Hon wa omoshiro kunai desu. So we're going to add the kunai to the omoshiroi stem, which is omoshiro. Over here, we keep hen the same and we just add de wa arimasen or janai desu. Finally, we're going to have a look at what happens when we get the negative past tense. And that would be the book was not interesting. Again, The book is our A portion of the sentence. Hong wa. Now we've got to change our adjective, omoshiroi, into the negative and the past form. So we've already got the negative here. Now we've got to change that into the past form. Now we do exactly as we would if this were a normal E adjective and not a negative E adjective. In other words, remove the E and we're left with omoshiroku na. That becomes our negative adjective stem. And of course our past tense form is katta. And that leaves us with hon wa omoshiroku nakatta desu. The book was not interesting. Na adjectives much more simple. We're going to have to leave a little bit of room there though to fit our word in. Hon wa, now the book was not strange, so hen, and then we get our is not before we change that into the past tense. So let's just get rid of des for the moment. Now here we've got the two forms of is not. So hon wa hen de wa arimasen. And to make that into the negative past tense, we've added deshita to de wa arimasen, and that gives us it was not strange. Now if we want to use the janai des form, it's a little more complicated because janai functions in the same way as an adjective. So I wouldn't use this in the negative if I were you, but if you did want to, then to change janai des into the negative past, you have to change janai into jana, and then you're going to add here katta. Jana katta desu. It wasn't strange. And that's the difference between E adjectives and na adjectives.